Welcome to our huge debate.
No.
We're gonna what?
Not a huge debate.
It is.
Is it?
It's massive.
Oh,
right. Before I pose the question for us to debate, I will point out it's the end of the season. We've done an end of season review with the Guardian's Jamie Jackson. That will be online very shortly. Keep your eyes out for it.
It'll be in the national papers with what he said on it as well.
It's good.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
It's real good. Clickbait worthy good.
Yeah.
Right, let's start this. We've got Paul, we've got John, we've got Howson, and this is the question, and it's worded appropriately. Simple. You ready? Paul, was it a good season? That's your debate. Go.
Yeah, it's a simple question with a complicated answer. I think, you know, a couple of days on from Stockholm and the spectacles are no less red tinted than they were when we were watching the lads muck about with the trophy, and we've all seen the lovely social media videos, and ultimately mission accomplished, right? We're in the Champions League for next season. We've won two trophies, Jose. That first one doesn't count. If we called Liverpool's the plastic treble, ours is the wooden treble. But this is not. That's not a real trophy. But the League Cup is a real trophy, albeit third in the pecking order. There's not many domestic competitions to be won, and winning a European trophy is absolutely massive. Of course, it's the football detention trophy. It's the European runners-up prize. But once you're in that, to win it is huge. It goes Wembley, no one calls it London, Wembley, Rotterdam, that night in Barcelona, Moscow, Stockholm gets added into the lexicon in that incredible pantheon of matches. So on that front, a wonderful, wonderful season. If you've followed the Reds around, it's been brilliant because you've got to see them win trophies. But even though some of the league form can be kind of explained away by just how much priority was put on the Europa League, you cannot really say this was a good season because in complete totality, without any caveats, because we weren't ever in the title race. Well, we were for 3 games, and that is not long enough to be in the title race. So I think at the beginning of the season, that's what we were hoping for. And in the end of the season, we've had a very different season than we would have expected. One with plenty of highs, plenty of lows, quite a lot of meh along the way. So a mixed season with a lovely ending.
Finished above the reigning champions, though. So great league.
So did like 15 other teams.
Great league season.
That's the real quiz.
Yeah. John, do you agree with that, or do you have your own opinions?
Now, I mean, it's hard to disagree. I mean, maybe if you'd asked me at the start of the season, John, we're going to finish 6th in the table. We're going to have a crap ton of injuries. We're going to lose Zlatan. We're going to lose Rojo. We're going to end 6th. We're going to win the League Cup, maybe the Europa. I would have said, yeah, but I would have expected a little bit more. Like Paul mentioned, I think the conversation in regards to the title challenge is probably the most relevant. I would have liked to see us really challenge. But with that being said, as the season progressed, as the injuries built up, all these games, game after game, you saw the exhaustion, you saw all these issues come up as the season progressed, and your expectations are bound to change. And
that's true.
Exactly.
I'm going to talk about expectations. So it's nice they both had a little moment to say something. I'm not going to give you that because we're now going to get right into it. So the debate title is, was it a good season? We're going to try and break it apart and work it out.
Hold up. On that other video, we plugged that I was going to answer this.
Well, that's why, because you're going to get involved in the breaking it down. I'm going to come to you first with, as John just mentioned, which was ideal for me because I could link it there. Thank you, John. Expectations. What did you expect at the start of this season, and did Manchester United deliver?
I didn't expect us to win the league. I was hopeful we could win the league and challenge for the title with the team that we had. And my prediction was United would win the league, with Chelsea splitting us and City. I was wrong. I think we could say comfortably wrong. But I thought the improvement was evident in terms of we're taking more chances, we're having more shots. Defensively, we look a little bit more stable. Certainly when defensively, we had a more discernible... I'm not going to say philosophy. I'm going to go not out of my hand, right? But I didn't. It wasn't a rigid system. It was a way of attempting to win pretty much every single game, apart from those that we evidently didn't try to win. And I think there's caveats around that. And I think there's caveats. I will go back to the original question on whether it was a good or bad season. I don't think you can answer it in a yes or no. I think expectations shifted the right way through the season, and I don't think I would call it a good season, but it's certainly not a bad season. So it's definitely something in the middle, more towards the more positive side of things. looking forward, but it's certainly not a bad one, and it's certainly not a good one.
Well, here's the thing. That is the title of the video, so don't spoil it by giving your answer straight away. We're just talking about expectations for the season. We're going to go back to the beginning and work along from there. Paul, what were your expectations? Were any of them met?
Some of my expectations were met. So the ones that were met were some more attacking football, some more, I guess attacking isn't even the right word, but like attacking in a direct sense, less possession obsessed, in that kind of less sterile. That's the word I'd use. I think I'm sure I predicted we'd win the league because I do every season, but I think realistically what I was hoping for, but also what I really thought would happen, is that United would be in the hunt this season. And it might be like Mourinho's first season in his second spell at Chelsea, where I think they finished third in the end, but they were kind of there or thereabouts for a good chunk of the season. The other expectation that I had, the one that really hasn't been met, is that we would be really effective in games against key title rivals, and it might not always be pretty, but we would get the results more often than not. And in fact, that's an expectation which Mourinho and United have fallen massively short of this season. There's a whole other side of this which is kind of negative expectations, so I kind of expected some fuss from Mourinho, and that's been there or thereabouts. I was really hoping we would see that he would have a more progressive attitude towards bringing young players through, and I think there's some evidence of that, but also some kind of knocks against that. So all in all, the key expectation of a league challenge wasn't met, but generally speaking, just about most of the rest of it was, other than that caveat about our performances in those big games.
Paul, those performances in the big games, though, how much of that do you put down to the fact that we basically phoned in those last few weeks of the season, because that's where we chunked half of those games against the other top four sides?
Yeah, I think that's that makes the top six table look way worse, because those two results against Arsenal and Spurs were more or less meaningless, and they really looked it. Yeah, I think that City game was too soon to have thrown in the league, though. I think by the time the Arsenal game had rolled around, you could maybe say it. But actually, I think the specifics of our performance against City, that's one of our worst performances of the season, I would say.
Was Pogba rested in that or injured? I can't remember.
He was injured. But the reason he was injured is because he was not dropped at any point anyway through the season. So like it's not like a brilliant kind of excuse that we didn't play well because Pogba was injured, because it's kind of our fault that Pogba was injured, really. But I think if you look back to Chelsea away, and especially Liverpool at home was the game that almost hurt most this season for me, because that was on the cusp. If we'd won that game, I seriously think we'd have had a very different season than the one that turned out, but we just didn't turn up at all in that one.
No, that was rubbish. So, John, what were your expectations at the start of the season, and were any of them achieved?
I started off the first question badly, but in sort of connection to what I had mentioned before, I wanted us to at least finish top three. I don't know about title challenge. I wanted us to finish top three, and I wanted us to take the Europa League. I didn't really think about anything else. Maybe, if anything, personnel issues. I wanted Jose Mourinho to solve the issue with Memphis, and one could say you actually did. Yeah, he did, exactly. He did solve it. He got rid of him. And whether or not that was for the better or for the worse, we'll see. But I think for me personally, it was a decision that had to have been made, and it was made with vindication. And I think Jose Mourinho made the right choice there. He's made progress going forward in terms of footballing style. I mean, we've seen what we've seen under Louis van Gaal. We've seen what we've seen under David Moyes. So it's been a massive improvement. People can say otherwise. People on Twitter, opposition fans coming at us saying, Jose Mourinho sixth in the table, all that jazz. None of that matters. Manchester United have improved in the quality of football. With that being said, it's not exactly where we want to be. Sometimes we've had games where we're just kind of like, holy crap. But nevertheless, the footballing improves. The sort of structure going from bottom to top. Goalkeepers has always been decent, but like defensively, midfield, going forward, we looked better. We looked more fluid. We have a little bit more dynamism on the pitch. Like Howson mentioned, defensively we look clean. Midfield, obviously, with the inclusion of Pogba, it's gotten an extra level up in terms of creativity, in terms of flair, in terms of sort of presence. And forward line, I think he's handled it pretty well. I mean, obviously there's improvements to be made on all parts of that pitch, but I couldn't have been asked for any more.
Okay, well, talking about what was happening on the pitch, this season we finished with 2 trophies, obviously not 3, as Paul has already pointed out. Do we think that's good? Because
we also won groundskeeper of the year.
Sure.
Good point.
But
Good point.
I think it was ground staff rather than just one particular individual. But also,
called Willie, isn't it?
do we know? Do we think that the winning of trophies is sort of masking the fact that we did so badly in the league?
I think that half of the so badly in the league was because we progressed in the Europa League and then we switched focus to the Europa League. I think without the distraction and the additional, 15 games of playing in the Europa League, we wouldn't have had some of the problems that we saw. We would have been a little bit fresher going into those games. But ultimately, we have to play with what we had to play with and we had to deal with what we had to deal with.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately, was we going to win the league at any point from September onwards? No. Right, so the other reasons for finishing inside the top 4 was to get Champions League qualification, and it would have been my preferred route to get Champions League qualification, just because I wanted to play it as safe as possible, rather than gambling on a one-off game in Stockholm at the end of the season. We still achieved the goal of getting into the Champions League, though. So whichever way it came, it came. So if you're not winning the league, coming second is no greater than coming 6th, because all you get is Champions League qualification on the back of it. Sure. If you pick up that Europa League trophy. It was just frustrating to see Manchester United phoning it in for those last few weeks. But essentially, we've had a better season than Spurs, despite them finishing 4 places ahead of us in the title. We picked up 2 trophies. They haven't done that. We're in the same pot as them. I think further up than them in the Champions League. Yeah. So deal with it.
Paul, do you agree? And also, can I add to the question? Do you think, as Howson pointed out, we did worse in the league because we focused on the Europa League, an extra 15 games? Is that a reasonable excuse for a club of the size of Manchester United to say, well, we've come 6th because we played the teams that came 5th and 6th in Spain through the year? Because that doesn't sound great.
No, the problem with it not being a good excuse, which it doesn't sound like a good excuse, is that it is 100% true. So it's like, okay, we can say that's not a good excuse, and you could argue that, John mentioned Memphis, shipped him out in January, shipped Schneiderlin out in January, never involved Schweinsteiger in the side hardly at all. So Mourinho kind of made a rod for his own back in terms of not being able to fight on both fronts with squad depth, because that's just not how he thinks about these things. So it doesn't sound like a good excuse, but it's been a problem right from the start of the season. And actually, if you look at the kind of seed of where the Europa League started to negatively affect United's league performance, it's not this last run, although that was the kind of final determinant. It's right at the beginning when we started to struggle with our first couple of group games. Did we lose the first game against Feyenoord away?
Yes.
I don't know.
And then we drew with West Brom.
Right, but because we dropped points early in the group, we had to play Zlatan and Pogba in more or less every game in the back half of the group stages of that tournament, meaning that there wasn't that kind of rotation rhythm developed right from early on in the season. So yeah, it isn't a great excuse. It doesn't sound great, but it is the thing that happened.
Yep.
So
So 2 trophies, and that's good.
Yeah, two trophies is lovely. The one thing I'd really disagree with is the flat out definitive we've had a better season than Spurs, because I totally understand the argument. Once you do that, that makes the season better. But say we just won the League Cup and not the Europa League, we'd then have won a trophy. But could we really realistically argue to have had a better season than Spurs? And the other thing is how it sets you up going forward, because I think, well, certainly had we not won the Europa League, everyone would rather be in Spurs' position than ours based on this season. And even now, I'd say, given how unproven, the Europa League win comes with a kind of natural uptick in optimism, but we still don't know. We're going to have European football next season. We still don't know whether we're going to be able to handle the rigours of that and mount a proper title challenge. Whereas I think
it's easier in the Champions League.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely true.
As out there that sounds. It is.
Yeah, but from 6th, though, it's going to need to be a lot easier, isn't it? To
but
realistically challenge for the league.
You're looking at United as finishing 6th as if that's where we are. We're the 6th best team in the country, and we're not. We are not the 6th best team in the country.
I understand what you're saying, but that is where we finish in the league.
Yeah, so but that doesn't necessarily...
I know we threw games away.
As against each other as it is, the team who wins the league is the best team in the country. But coming 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th, in that order doesn't mean that that's the order of all of those teams.
No,
because there's certain circumstances in how you arrived at that position.
That's true.
We was the 6th best team in that competition, essentially.
Right. Yeah, well, we were.
But that's it.
The league table never lies.
But it sometimes does.
Even if you take the last month and a half and say, well, none of those results really count, we still weren't in the running for the league title at any point in the season. And that not mounting a title challenge versus kind of being in the hunt for a title challenge, I think if Spurs had got closer, the argument that they'd had an equal or better season than us would be stronger if it hadn't been that kind of just they nearly got close right at the end, but then eventually didn't kind of mount a proper challenge. But I think it's not cut and dried that because we got that means we automatically had a better season. Although
it does, though, when you don't win anything.
No, but I guess
I understand from Spurs' perspective they see progression, but when you don't win a single thing at the end of the season,
they're in much better shape to do this again next year and try and win the league.
They've got this. They've got to deal with the stadium move, and that's going to be a big factor.
No. But in theory, their players have just done a 38-game Premier League season
and won nothing.
And come second
and won nothing.
Got really close to winning. They now go again and go, right, guys.
Really
2 years ago we were third. This year we're second. Now let's go that bit extra. Where United have got to go, right, we need to pick up an extra 30 points. Or whatever. We've got to do an awful lot more than what we did.
You're looking at it thinking that we had our foot to the floor to the end of the season, and that's absolutely not the case.
No, I understand, but they did. So their mindset is better going into next season because we didn't manage to do that, I think.
One of the reasons we didn't have our foot to the floor at the end of the season was because we'd already blown it. So it's like it's all very well to just kind of consider the points we dropped right at the end, but we dropped an awful lot of points before we got into that run.
Do you know when Arsenal came second last season? And they came second without the pressure being on. That doesn't mean that they was that second best team in the country. And look where they finished on the back of that. So they went from 2nd to 5th just because they went hard at the end of the season.
Would you honestly compare Spurs of this season's league season to Arsenal's the season before? Because I wouldn't in a million years.
No, I wouldn't. I think you're looking at two mentalities and two different football clubs in two different cycles of their life, massively. But what I'm saying is that when you look back at this season, no one, I wouldn't have thought, even if it's the peak of where Spurs get to, no one's going to look back and say that Spurs team had or remember that 2017 Spurs team over this.
History is on the side of the teams that win trophies.
Of course it is.
So in 3 years' time, this is the team that won the Europa League and the League Cup. Spurs did nothing.
Who came second in 1991? Does anyone remember? Or does anyone remember United picking up the Cup Winners' Cup?
You're stealing. I made that very point earlier in the season review that
we came second in '92.
That was the game.
I
think it may have been
John.
It might have been Forest.
You've been ludicrously quiet. You're not a viewer, just sat at home in front of your phone. Shout some abuse at people, for the love of God.
The conversation you guys were having was pretty healthy. I mean, there was a lot of fuego.
It wasn't enough. Get it stuck in.
Well, I want to kind of digress off that point of comparing us to other teams above us or whatever, who's had a better season. I want to compare us more so to ourselves. I took some time to sort of reflect on what has happened to Manchester United post Sir Alex Ferguson. I mean,
yeah, we saw you reflecting. You were very quiet.
A lot.
I was at a lake
and everything with like ballads.
No, but if you think about it, honestly, has Jose Mourinho progressed Manchester United? And I would 110% like to say yes, only because we've done so much to get to where we are past Sir Alex Ferguson. I mean, David Moyes was a disaster. Louis van Gaal was a nightmare in some respects, not all, but some respects. And while we can compare ourselves to have we had a better season than Spurs, Arsenal, none of that matters to me. It's all that is irrelevant. I think I kind of took my time to reflect on ourselves and just to see how we were. And I think from Jose Mourinho to have come to this team to be able to win the Europa League and sort of get us back into the Champions League with also a League Cup with the squad that he was given after Louis van Gaal has left. That's not even his team, granted. I think it was a good season. I mean, whether or not Spurs have won anything, Arsenal won anything, none of that matters to me. The fact that Manchester United have progressed, Manchester United have made steps going forward. Yes, 30 points is going to be massive next season, but the fact of the matter is we have progressed, and that's the end all for me.
So you're happy with how we played, John?
Hell no. Absolutely not. I think, see, that also the thing is progression, yes. We've done more. I think Manchester United have done more. But I think Jose Mourinho sort of underestimated the squad, or not have had the proper gauge in terms of understanding what these players can do for him. Like Paul mentioned, we've all voted Memphis, Schneiderlin, Schweinsteiger. A year ago, Manchester United fans would have thought Schneiderlin would have been a key figure in this squad. Maybe not so much in the sense that he would have been in the starting 11, one of the first names on the starting 11. But the fact is, he was a good player, and we thought maybe Jose Mourinho might sort of revitalize him, as is maybe with Memphis. Who knows?
I thought the fact is, starting 11 player, Schneiderlin. I really did.
So that's what I'm saying. People had that sort of idea that these players were going to be either rejuvenated or offloaded, whatever it is. And I think Jose Mourinho sort of underestimated and overestimated and all that jazz. And I think that's hence the reason why we weren't able to manage all these games. And the quality of football, it was going to be that way. I mean, if Jose Mourinho mathematically or logically thinks we're not going to be able to get results, or if we're going to need to sit back, it's going to happen. And the footballing wasn't great. You guys are arguing about, what matters. And I think, despite the football not being great, if we, at the end of the day, we lift in trophies, years time, we're going to look back on the history of who won what. We're going to be up there, and that's what we're going to remember. Hopefully, just going forward, the football is going to improve. More trophies, more points. Done.
Nice. See, everyone 5 minutes ago saying, "Oh, John's pretty quiet. Why is it saying anything?" That's why he saves it. What a hero. Right, some of you can now enjoy this lovely advert. Good advert. Now, let's talk about Mourinho. This has been his first season. When he was appointed, there were a few concerns about what he might be like as manager of Manchester United. Paul, do you believe he has represented the club well?
I think he's hit par, I would say. I don't think it's been outstanding. I think there's been too much complaining about circumstance, which it's kind of Mourinho to a T, really. He's always going to do it. Some people would argue that a percentage of it is done for effect. My suspicion would be that is a percentage rather than the totality of it, and actually he kind of does think the world's out to get him a little bit. So there's been a bit too much complaining, some of which has been about stuff that's his fault. I think his record with bringing through young players, with playing young players at United has been sketchy at best. I think Rashford serves as a brilliant exception to the rule, which kind of he can point at that table that was doing the rounds a little bit ago, that out of everyone in the top 10 managers, he's the one that's given most minutes to teenagers or whatever. But basically that just meant Marcus Rashford. If you think about Timothy Fosu-Mensah, he's had one start and 3 substitute appearances in the league for a total of 96 minutes. And given that he played 90 minutes in his starts, that kind of tells you where the substitutes appearances were coming in. Axel Tuanzebe did really well, but only after the season stopped mattering. So that stuff wasn't ideal. And just generally, he's just looked really glum for most of the season. And I think that's because it's been a long, hard season for him. And it was lovely to see him finally looking actually happy after winning the Europa League. That was one of the highlights of the season for me, was seeing Mourinho look happy. So I think par, nothing disastrous, but nothing that would make me think, okay, this is it, he's got the job he's always dreamed of, and now he's changed into the United man we always hoped he'd be. I think that to say that would be to be massively overstating it.
Yeah, I think that seems fair. Howson, do you agree?
I don't think he looked glum because of how long the season was. He was looking glum instantly when he got here. Actually,
he did look miserable.
It seemed like he seemed like he worked at it. It seemed like he maybe was like quite jovial before he walked out onto the pitch. Was like, hang on, let me get my face on. Right, miserable now. Let's go. It definitely seemed like he worked on it. There's certain aspects that I've got question marks over with him that entirely off the pitch. Tactically, like I said, really impressed with him, and some of the things that he's done tactically. Definitely agree on the youth thing. He's padded his record massively with that last game of the season, bringing Angel Gomez on to get that record. It's hilarious almost that he's done it. I'm glad he's done it, and I hope some of those players are putting performances to Tuanzebe, Rashford. The level of performance that they've been able to put in, I hope has at least made him go, maybe I don't need teams of 28 and 30-year-olds. Maybe I actually can go to the well a little bit here because, I mean, Demi Mitchell and Josh Hart's performances in that last game of the season were fantastic. I hope that there's at least something nagging at him to say, let's have a look here. I don't think you're going to change him completely.
No,
Certainly
there
not
isn't.
in one season. But things like him still living inside the hotel doesn't make sense to me. That's not a guy that's planning for the long term of being here. And whether he stays for the long term or not, I'd like to think that he's come at it with the best intention and not just saying, I'm going to live in a hotel because I'm not going to be here. That's all that says to me, is that it's not his forever home, whether it is or not. Yeah, it's not.
And that his family still live in London.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that he sees himself being here for the long term. But I also think a lot of his demeanour has been on the fact that he's been wounded by the sacking at Chelsea and the performance of Chelsea, and to an extent the performance of United at times this season. And now I think maybe he doubted himself. Maybe, we see him as this big egotistical guy, but maybe there was a little bit of self-doubt and a little bit of a humbling of Jose Mourinho over the last couple of years in England and his relative failure after winning the league with Chelsea. So now he's been able to sort of prove that he's still got something to offer as a manager. Some excellent performances tactically from his team and picking up 2 trophies and getting that Champions League qualification. I think you might see a really renewed Mourinho going into next season with a real purpose, because it seems like he's completely done this season. He's like, get me on holiday straight away. But I think once he comes back, I think you might see a real thingy. But that hotel thing still sticks in my mind.
2018, year of the rebirth. John? You've been quiet
yes,
again? Come on.
No, well, I think Jose Mourinho sort of put himself in that predicament in terms of sort of understanding Manchester United's sort of history and the style that we play and whatnot. And I want to make a specific reference to youth. Fans have been dying for Jose Mourinho to call out the likes of Axel Tuanzebe, Timothy Fosu-Mensah. We have quality in terms of youth on the bench, and I think, hypothetically speaking, if Jose Mourinho had not gotten that squad into that position, fighting for top 4 with very minimal hopes and sort of banking on the Europa League, I think we would have seen a little bit more introduction of youth. I think Jose Mourinho sort of taking this inaugural season with a massive sort of reprieve and sort of understanding that Manchester United, I'd like to think that Manchester United are a special club with special fans, and we have a massive history and the traditions rooted within the club. And I think Jose Mourinho's sort of felt that immense impact coming into his inaugural season. And I think had we handled the season a little bit better, maybe had we sort of done our dealings better, have we won our points, I think Jose Mourinho would have resorted to youth a little bit more and resorted to sort of
So you think actually that had we not ended up being in 6th for half of the season and we'd been, say, challenging for the league, you think in that scenario he would have been more inclined to play less tested, more risk players, less experienced players?
Yes,
to me seems the complete opposite of everything I know about Jose Mourinho.
Exactly, and that's why
you think it.
Exactly. It might be very naive. It might be very naive of me to think that way, but there's a part of me that wants to think Jose Mourinho's coming to this job really wanting this job, and I think that's the impetus for my point that Jose Mourinho sort of would have opted for variations in his coaching methods. I'm not saying here that he was going to give debuts left, right, and center and let them play in the starting 11 every single time, but I think it would have been a little bit more reoccurring in terms of what Jose Mourinho's usual method of approach is when it comes to selecting his 11. And yes.
Even if that's the case, though, that the fact that when the going gets tough, he doesn't trust young players, that's the fundament that we're kind of worried about. If you think, I mean, not to compare everyone with Fergie in the good old days, which is really easy to do, but the whole kind of modern cultural acceptance that United as a team that back youth is based on the fact that he sold Ince, Kanchelskis, Hughes in the same summer and handed over the reins to the class of 92. Basically, there were a lot of very experienced players around them, but that he wholesale invested and gambled on young players. And look, I'm not saying that you have to do that if you're Man United manager. I'm not saying that Mourinho should have not bought Paul Pogba because he should have played Scott McTominay from the beginning of the season. But I am saying that we know Mourinho doesn't trust young players, and this season has been further evidence of that.
And I also know for a fact that up until January, February, that Mourinho wasn't even bringing the players into training except for when there was injuries. And certain players said, he doesn't even know my name at that point. He said he would bring us in as making the number. I need 18 for training. I've got 15. Go and get me 3 of them lot. They bring them in. Doesn't know the name. Get back down into the 23s. I think at the end of the season that clearly changed. But that was his stance up until January. So I don't think if we'd have been doing any better, he would have played the youth. I think he played the youth. 1, because he could. 2, because it pads his record. And 3, because we really needed to be resting players at that time.
I think from my cynical view of the world, I think it's totally realistic that is what he would do, because he's come into a team that, since Sir Alex Ferguson retired, has struggled everywhere. So he is going to, and he was anyway. Prior to this, Mourinho is totally short-term focused on winning trophies. And that's what he was doing. He wasn't going, I'm going to be here 5 years, let's see who I might be, let's see what Josh Harrop is about, and then in 4 years, he might be the best 23-year-old we've got.
I had no problem with that this season.
No, that's what I mean.
There was a bigger picture
I never expected him to do that, really, I guess.
Exactly. And I just want to add, like, before I get slaughtered in the comment section, like, of course
I'm not going to slaughter you that bad.
You're going to slaughter me after the cameras are off. But anyways, despite, like, I'm not trying to sit here and be the naive 12-year-old that says Jose Mourinho's got to play youth from the get-go. Like, I'm not saying that. The game has evolved throughout the years, from the 90s to the early 2000s. It's harder. It's gotten biologically, it's gotten harder for these players. They're all, like, their physiques has improved. It's just every single aspect of the game has changed, and you can't expect for Jose Mourinho to be dishing out debuts like that. There's too much things right on sort of what they're playing for. But with that being said, there was a side of me, to conclude, that there was a side of me that would have thought maybe Jose Mourinho might have sort of used the better position that we might have been into, hypothetically, as like a sort of a leeway for these players to come on. And of course, he's not going to bring on, youth. You saw that in every other player. Louis van Gaal last season, or the season before that. He didn't dish out debuts to Paddy McNair and Tyler Blackett because he thought they were amazing in training. We had a defensive crisis, and that's where they came on. It's going to be that way going forward, regardless, and fans are going to need to sort of accept that. But that being said, I hope Jose Mourinho sort of embraces the club's philosophy with a little bit more.
There's very few young players that have been given their debut as part of a plan. I think a lot of young players get their debut on the back of an injury, or like we saw a lot in the early 90s on the foreigner rule in Europe that drafted loads of men. Like Gary Neville got his debut on the back of having to deal with that foreigner rule. And I think that there's very rarely ideal situations to blood in teenagers and stuff like that. So you have to just get your opportunity, take your opportunity the way Marcus Rashford did, and then hope that you can stick around and be in the manager's plans.
That's how life works. Right, let's move on.
Sorry. There was just one more off the field thing that I wanted to mention, Sam.
Go on.
It's a quick one. In his interview, brilliant interview with Rio Ferdinand, which was on BT Sport after the Europa League final had finished, Mourinho talked about, he was asked about the weight of history that sits on the players' shoulders at United, and he said it's important that they understand it, but it's important that it isn't So one of the things that he did was at Carrington, he dedicated, there's all like artwork of the history of the club everywhere, and he dedicated 2 big walls at Carrington to the FA Cup win and the League Cup win that the current side have got, to kind of make them feel that they're part of the winning legacy of Manchester United. And I just think that kind of psychology is vital right now, and I was really pleased to hear that he'd done that.
I think there's a couple of blank walls as well where he said, we ain't filled them yet. That's to come, as well as what he's already put. I like that.
Nice. Great. Probably should have done the lap of honour though, shouldn't he? Now, the future.
Let's talk about that.
The future. Let's not. We'll all get angry. How are you feeling going into the transfer window and looking ahead to next season?
I hate the transfer window.
Language.
I can't. Sorry, I do. There's just so much garbage running around.
But it's like a.
I'd like to go into a.
It's like a second season drama, isn't it? It's like there was Cheers, and I don't know, Frasier was like a spin-off, wasn't it? It's like that. It's like a whole separate entity to the main event, but it's still fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Who knows who's going to win?
And I'm going to get sucked into it like everybody else, but I hate it. It's a killer, just constantly every single. I'm gonna pay it no attention. Maybe I'll just read the headline. Maybe I'll just read the first paragraph. Maybe I'll just read 47 articles on it from different sources and try and draw a CSI map on my bedroom wall and figure out what's going on this season. Maybe I'll do that. I don't know. It well overtakes everything. And I do think some people actually take more interest in, and this upsets me, to be honest. I think people take more interest, and I know there's reasons for it as well, in transfer windows than they do in the actual football. And someone explained
Agents
to me,
do.
it's like, listen, everyone can watch the match. They don't need to be endlessly digging up information about watching the match. But because the transfer business happens behind closed doors, there's that secret element to it, which makes
it's a
it
gritty
exciting
drama
for people. And people don't really know where to go, so they're clicking and reading every single thing about it, and it's frustrating.
It's like Broadchurch.
I'm glad at Full Time Devils that we don't buy into the hype of transfers and that we try our best, as with some outlets out there, Sports Witness are fantastic for it, trying to actually settle down transfer rumours and try and get to the bottom of them rather than just going, we're signing him, on him, I'm signing him.
Say that now, but I've heard we're signing Messi and Ronaldo. Not Cristiano, the Brazilian.
Oh, better.
It's going to be interesting. Paul, how are you feeling? Howson not excited?
No, I mean, the thing is, Fraser to Cheers is quite a nice comparison, because although people think of Fraser as the kind of more cerebral, but actually the structure of Fraser episodes is really simplistic. They're all like French farce structure, and the transfer window is a total farce. So it's kind of it's a messy, ugly, boring thing. The good thing about football matches is you know when they're on and when they're going to finish. You don't know that with the transfer window, do you?
That's
I mean,
true.
you know when the window's
Well,
going to finish, but you know when the window's going to finish, but not when the story's going to finish.
De Gea.
Having said all that, vive Antoine Griezmann! Allez, Manchester United! Hey, all this business. You know that's going to be the big conversation until it happens or falls apart at the last minute, because those are the two options at this point, aren't they? But yeah, the general machinations of the transfer window are really boring. I like the 3 days before a transfer happens. The kind of, he's on a plane to Manchester, this is really happening. That bit's good. But all the kind of like reading the tea leaves that happens in the months leading up to that is super depressing. I
also like the picture that they always take at in front of that stained glass window that looks like it belongs in a really, really crappy 70s or 80s bar.
Oh, the one inside Old Trafford?
Yeah, like, it just looks rubbish. John, are you looking forward to the transfer window? How do you think it will affect us in preparing for next season? Because also, people will come in, but guys, people will go.
People will go.
Yeah. Exactly. I think this restructuring is going to be very important, and like just bar the stories and whatnot. Because like Howson mentioned, I hate reading these transfer rumors. You know, this guy said this. Now the agent's back in Manchester talking. Like all that crap needs to go out the window. But with that being said, it's going to be exciting because Jose Mourinho is going to have his time now. He's going to have an actual full summer to really understand who needs to go and who needs to come. And he said he's given Ed Woodward his list, his shopping list already and whatnot. Hopefully he's also given him his like throwaway list or something like that, because we really need to restructure the squad. And I'm really looking forward to the transfer window more so than anything. Yeah.
I'd love it if he titled it the throwaway list.
Oh, just on the top, underlined twice.
Yeah. The throwaway list. So, these guys.
I do think Jose is going to do some good work, though, because I was impressed with his assessment of what the team needed before he came in. And I've said this a couple of times on video, that I think he expected Wayne Rooney to be this, and he turned out to not be this. And I think if Rooney had been a bit more of an effective goal scorer in the team, we may have done a bit better. I think he came in thinking, I've got Rooney, I've got Marshall, I've got Rashford. Yeah. I'm going to bring in Zlatan, and we've got X. I don't think he got that. So I think his assessment of what we had prior to coming was very good. Now I'm excited to see what his assessment of what we need is after being here a year. Because if it's anything like what his assessment was before he got here, then it's going to be a very good summer.
Okay, so the title of this debate was this a good season? And you've all shared lots of opinions. And I think all in all, historically, it will be judged as, yes, that was a good season for Manchester United. They won several trophies. But on the basis of experiencing it, no, it's sort of been hellish at times. The 0-0s and even just the 1-0s and the draws and the inability to perform well in the big games, like against any of the teams that came above us in the league. There wasn't like a really good classic encounter in any of those. We didn't.
Chelsea at home.
Yeah, but at that point they were still going to win the league and we weren't, so it didn't mean anything. It was still a good victory, but I think the overall performance in the league is one of the worst I can remember, despite the fact that the team was better than it has been. At least like Van Gaal's team, like sometimes won. It just didn't feel like we ever won. It was just like, oh, it's another draw. And that was frustrating for like the last 8 months. But history will remember this as a good season, so I think we can say that it was a good season. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the transfer window. Also, we've done a season review video that's out very soon, and it's really good. There's one hell of a bombshell coming from Jamie Jackson. So, be good to each other. And Paul, say your Griezmann thing again. I like that.
Allez Griezmann! Vive Antoine Griezmann!
It's German. Translation, subscribe to Full Time Devils.